Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for spending July 1st with me. I am really, really pumped for today. One of the reasons I am so pumped for today is the fact that none of you have actually ever come to this workshop. So this has been something that when people are like, can you come and please teach a workshop within my community? We want to talk about, like putting your intellectual property into offers, or we want to talk about like creating passive products. This is the workshop that I teach. So unless you've come through someone else's community and you've experienced that way, you probably have no idea what I'm going to say, which is really, really, really exciting. So what we are doing today is we are learning how to work smart and make bank. And really, like, what this looks like is how can we put our intellectual property, how can we put what we do in, a daily basis, or the transformation that we do for our clients. It doesn't need to be everything. It can be a small component. How can we put that into something for us to sell? So I want to ask you a question, and I want you to I don't know, maybe you want to close your eyes or just feel into this. How would it feel to make $1 million from what you already know? So just think about that, okay? How would it feel to make $1 million from what you already know? So not doing another course, not upskilling, not completely changing your business, not being like, oh, AI is here, so I need to evolve. Right now, with everything that is in your head, how would it feel to make $1 million? I think about this a lot whenever I feel kind of at a loss at, how am I going to make money? How am I going to grow my business? And I always think that people have made a lot more for selling a lot less. And that if you have been doing this for a while, and if you are an incredible service provider, or even if you've got an e-commerce brand and you have got the whole process down to a really fine art, you are all sitting on information that people will buy. And this is where it is just about packaging it up so that people can buy it, but of course, giving you an actual framework so that you can do this as well. Now, you all have $1 million offering in your head, every single one of you. And even if you're like, look, I am at the moment only selling $10 ebooks, that's fine, because we do have a task later on where we talk about how we can kind of stretch and change that. But you all have information within you that can be something that can be very, very, very profitable for you and your business. And something that I believe is that it doesn't matter what you sell. It doesn't matter what industry you are in. It doesn't even matter whereabouts you are in business. I have seen people before that have, they're a year into business. They've just got a really awesome start. They've got their first, 10,000 followers on TikTok, and that's what they teach on. I have seen some people who have been doing this for 15 years, whatever it is. But, I believe that we all have something within us, and it doesn't matter if we think that it's just something that people aren't going to pay for, because they absolutely will. And why I am so deeply passionate about this is because if you have been following my work for a while, you know that I am all for a bad days business model. And what this means is that you shouldn't have continual good days in your business to get paid. And this is something very common for people within the service-based industry, where you are executing work. So we have to go out, we get a client, we execute the work, then we get paid for that, and then we need to start the whole process again. The problem is with that is that it prevents you from having the life that you want or being a human. And what I mean by this is if you ever feel like that you are sick, or you can't get sick, or you don't want to take a holiday because you're worried that your income will stop, this is a really big problem. Now, this is something that I have experienced as well, where I feel like that anything that kind of got in the way of me working really stressed me out, and stuff that shouldn't have really been a thing. The smartest thing that you can do is have something within your business that doesn't require a lot of output of your labor or labor from your staff for you to get paid. And this is for a variety of reasons, all right? Now, one of my favorite success stories of this, and gosh, I wish she was a client, is Miss Excel. Have we heard of her before? She really popped off on TikTok in pandemic era, and she sells courses on Microsoft Excel. That's all she does. And she doesn't just have one, she has multiple. Like if you go to her website, there are so many on there. And she had, this is in US dollars, she had a $100,000 course sales day. I love this story because quite often we can really get in our head thinking people will only want to pay for something where it's buy this, learn how to make $1 million, or buy this and never have to work again. And we convince ourselves that what we are selling isn't really that sexy. I don't know if you felt like that before, where you maybe have looked at someone that has had a big launch or a big result, or it feels like they're easily selling something. And you're like, oh, well, of course you are, because that's really hot or that's really desirable. And I love this example because never in my life have I ever been looked at Microsoft Excel and thought that's sexy. And who knows, maybe you're thinking the same with email. But this is just a reminder that it doesn't matter what you sell, it can be packaged into something that is absolutely scalable. So we are going to learn today a little bit of a 5-step formula. We are going to extract our genius, shape the offer, enter the matrix, price for profit, and then validate. So if you have been feeling like that you have a lot of ideas rolling around, if you in the past have wanted to release something and it just hasn't got the traction that you've wanted, or if you feel like that you have been almost doing from a place of should, well, I should release this first, I should do this first. This is going to give you a really good little framework to follow to get that out. Now, before we continue, hi, hello, I'm Peter. I was like, I don't know how you found me. Maybe you came in from my Facebook ad. I did them myself. And I've been in business for a very long time, officially since 2009. And it started in that upper left-hand corner, which was a Pilates studio. And I also knew that having a business in a regional town was going to very much limit the amount of money that I could make. This was in Maitland. You could get a gym membership at Snap Fitness for $9.95. There is only so many clients that I could have, so many classes that I could teach. There was no one there that actually had their qualification, their diploma of professional Pilates. So I was really in between a rock and a hard place. And when I was talking before about a bad day's business model, let me tell you, the stress of feeling like that, someone's bought gastro through the whole studio and then all of a sudden it's like my income is ripped out from underneath me is a really stressful feeling. So I created a Pilates DVD, and that was my first ever product. Now, this was a physical product. And what I eventually did, and this was back when people were buying DVDs. It's funny when you say that and everyone's like, a DVD. I'm like, yes, they were very on trend back then. But then I transitioned it to a digital download. So people would pay for the download and I would look at my phone and I was just always having money flow through to my phone. But if we go back and we look at all of these different, iterations of Professional Babe and what I've done over the years, something that I have made sure to do is create some kind of passive offer or scalable offer within each iteration, okay? So what a lot of you probably know me for right now is Give Good Email, which is my email marketing and marketing automation program. This was created because I was doing usually the same work with every client. Clients would come to me, they're like, my situation is so unusual and terrible. And I'm thinking, I've done 4 of the same things this week. And I realized that I had a system that worked and that I couldn't keep doing services like this. I wanted to think bigger. But I've made sure whatever I've done, I have put my intellectual property into something that can sell so that I don't have to execute the work. And this is so, so very freeing, especially if you feel like that you don't want to work or you don't want to sell more, because on the other side of that, there's a whole lot of delivery that has to happen, okay? Now, you are already successful. Why go to the extra effort? I'm bringing this up because one of the biggest blocks that I see people make is that if you already have a lot of clients and they're paying you money and it's working really well for you, this is going to feel like it's a lot of work without no initial outcome. And what I want to say is to just power through and know that if you are doing something good, if you are like warming people up, the sale will eventually come. But there is going to be a period of time where you will feel like that you are doing an amount of work and the sales are yet to come in. So it can sometimes feel easier to go back to what you know. But what we want to make sure is that, we are kind of putting some effort into this and having that little teething period where it may feel like we're doing a bit more work and we're not seeing the money just yet. Everyone has capacity, but your earning potential should not be capped. So you can only have so many hours for clients and to work. So if you want to have a really big business, I don't believe that should come from hiring like 15 different staff. People have problems. People have sick days. They want to go on holidays. Staff are not oftentimes reliable. And we don't want our livelihood to be hinged on that. Number 2, because we need a bad days business model. So we want to make sure that we are setting ourselves up and our business up and our future up, that we don't require us to be always on and always healthy and always in the office to get paid. Now, you can do the work once and you can get paid multiple times. This is what I have done with Give Good Email. And it is very interesting to tell people about this in my co-working space where most of these businesses in here are quite traditional business. We've got like a lot of property development and real estate. And it's interesting after I've had like bigger like sales days and launches and they're like, oh, and now the work starts. I'm like, there's no work starts. Like they bought Give Good Email. Like I'll check in with them. They're in the group, but I don't have to go and execute all this work. And that kind of will break their brain a little bit. Because they are of the opinion that it's like you sell the thing and then you have to deliver the thing, all right? It's such a smart way to do it when you can kind of hack what works for you. Now, it gives you the ability as well to have a dramatic price increase. So who on here is feeling like that they actually want to have a price increase, but for whatever reason, you aren't doing it? Because maybe you're like, I am worried I'm going to lose all my clients, or we've got the cost of living, or no one's going to pay it. I am worried that they're going to go to my competitor. Like who feels like the notion of even increasing your price as $1 is going to have people kind of just disperse everywhere and your business is going to fall out from underneath you? Because I think that is valid. But the thing is that when you actually have scalable offers that still deliver the transformation that you can provide one-to-one, what this gives you the ability to do is to have something there that if people can't afford the big thing, you still have another option for them as well, all right? So you can still serve to them. And this brings up point number 5 is you actually can expand into more segments and even different markets. So this is something that is awesome to think about, especially if you feel like you potentially live in a place where you know that the kind of clientele that you want to work with is not there. Now, when I started my businesses, I was living in Maitland, and I don't really know if any of you know Maitland, but it's not really like the cultural epicenter of the world. What I wanted to do is serve people that lived well beyond Maitland. So if that is you, it gives you the ability to do that as well. The first step that we are going to do is extract our genius. Now, the first part of any offer is not the idea. A lot of people think that they need to think about like the idea. Like I'm going to create a 6-week writing course, or I'm going to create an offer about teaching people how to do a kitchen floor plan. Okay. It is deciding how you are different. This is the most important thing because especially now with, I think, AI and a lot of what is coming up, it's really interesting. I saw someone post the other day about emails. And what she shared, she's like, I got this email and it reads like so similar to like all of these other people. And she kind of depersonalized it so you couldn't really see too much. And then everyone in the comments was basically being like, oh my God, yes, I've seen this heaps. What we want to make sure is that we don't have people that look at what you're selling and then what they're doing is they are weighing up between the thing that you sell and the thing that your competitor sells and the thing that your other competitor sells, all right? So, it could be something where if I've got my email course, Give Good Email, I don't want a competitor who's like, not a competitor, a consumer who looks at my competitor and they're like, do I buy that email course Or do I buy that email course? Or do I buy that email course? I don't want that. I want someone that looks at this and they are like, she is in a lane of her own. It doesn't even compare to what this offering is. Now, how you do that, a lot of people think, let me add all of these fucking bonuses. Let me add some free steak knives and a hand job. We're just going to put them to the side for a second, because the most important thing is that if you have this where it feels like it is a true extension of you, it doesn't matter how many freebies you add or what you do. This is something that people can't compete with because this has come from you. So it is so important that we have U-shaped offers that stand out in a sea where you are absolutely going to have people that are doing the same thing. And you want that, okay? Because it's already validated then, and people have usually done the hard work by warming people up to, hey, you need this thing. You just have to come in and make yours a bit different and a bit, sexier, a bit more on brand, whatever that may be. So what I want you to start to do from today is I want you to take stock of the value and transformation that you provide. You can keep a list in your phone. You can screenshot some stuff. I want you to do this whenever people message you on socials, they write back to your emails, you get off like the call with a client or even a discovery call. And I want you to start to just like write down and get really clear on kind of the words that people use, how they describe you, and what they're naturally interested in. Because there's going to be like a lot of data in here that will actually influence and shape your offer. You're always having data of people kind of affirming why you're amazing. So please make sure you write that down. You can start to think about what you love doing with your clients. I want to say too that you may feel like you have kind of like reached the end of doing something where you don't really love it anymore, but you know that you're very good at it and you know that you love the results that you get people, but you feel like that you've kind of like, you're like, I've graduated out of doing that. If that's you and you continually have like a market for something, you can put that into a particular product. You just want to make sure that you are creating that though before you fucking hate the thing. So that's something really good to remember. So if you feel like that you're like, okay, I feel like in 6 months' time, I'm not going to do this anymore, but it still could be something, that could be a really good like product for you to create. What you want to think about as well is what do people always compliment you on? So what do you get praise on? What makes people like notice what you're doing? And this goes back to that other point of starting to just keep a list like in your phone or have like a little screenshot folder of what people say. What do you do that you are good at that you don't necessarily enjoy? So going back to that point number one, where if you feel like that your skill level or you are moving away from doing something, this is really perfect if you're like, I'm always getting a market for this particular thing. I've been doing this for a while, but I'm ready for a big price increase. We are having a bit of a rebrand and I don't want to do that anymore. Again, you can create something where that can be something self-paced. It can solve a core need. And that if people come to you and they're like, hey, I need Flowdesk set up. I saw in a Facebook group that you do this. You can say, hey, I don't anymore. However, I've actually packaged this into something that you can do within an afternoon. It's $80. It's really cheap. Let me know if this is something that you would like more information on. And then you think about it. You don't have to do the work. You can just have a conversation, send a payment link, get paid. Like, how fun is that? Another thing to think about as well is what do you hate within your industry? What do you hate? Now, the next thing is, it's a pick me girl contest. What is your secret move for winning? So imagine that you are in a lineup with all of your competitors, all right? And someone's like, I want to buy the thing that you're selling, but how do I know that yours is best? Like, what would you say to win them over? How are you truly different? Like, what do you offer that no one else can offer? And I don't want you to be like, oh, we get really good results. If people are good, everyone gets people good fucking results. Like, what are you doing? Like, win them over. It can be something insane. Like, I used to be a dominatrix and I have so many anecdotes to tell. You hop on a call, I'm probably going to start talking about what I did to Ted back in 1993. So like, what is it? Because this is often where we kind of can start like competing with like, well, I am great because I'm good at my job. Do you know what I mean? It's like, not that I went to university, but I think about Harvard where everyone's like the best of the best of the best. And as you grow in business and you get more visible, you're going to be among that. So just remember this. It's like, what are your little secret moves that no one else can do? And then really drill down further. It's like, truly, how are you different? What is something that you'd love to do but feels bloody scary to do? This is probably one of the most important questions on here, because quite often we will wait too long to kind of like put something in motion and package it up. So I want you to think about something that feels like truly transformative for you and the people that you could sell to. Like, what does that look like? What is something that you could do? And sit with that, because there's going to be something really amazing in here that I know will just like bubble to the surface. Now, when we're talking about how our uniqueness can kind of influence an offer, I had a stint where I was like a sex and dating writer, which was very interesting. People think that you would get more dates, but you kind of get more with the wrong people and less with the people that you want to date. And this is why when you look at all of the content that I put out there, there is like a bit of an innuendo present. There, we've got a bit of a dating theme. So it's like, I've got a content marketing course. It's not called Go Viral in a Month or How to Get 10,000 Followers or like How to Sell on social. It's not that. It's called Web Patch Content. And it's so funny. I actually had a session yesterday with Sophia from True North Witch. I was like, right, let's close the financial year and like start the new financial year in a really sexy way. And she had mentioned Web Patch Content on the call. And I was like, I love that you remember my offers. And she said, she's like, it's just so you that you can't help but remember it. And this is where you can do the same. And what we want you to create things that really stick in people's heads, or it's something that they just have not seen. So remember that like all of the things that make you you, especially if you are a really hot personal brand, this can influence the offers and what you sell. And it may even be for those of you who have a current offer. Maybe you've got like a passive offer and you're like, it is not selling. It is dead in the fucking ground. Maybe it just needs a bit more you present. And maybe there is nothing that really needs to change. We're just going to give it a bit of a haircut and we're just going to color it. Everything else is fantastic, but we just need a little bit of a freshen up. And maybe that's actually what is letting your offer down. What you may find is that you have some offers that kind of are starting to bubble to the surface. So what we do from here is we start to shape the offer. When you are at the stage where you are really clear on your unique selling proposition, your genius, and the value that you provide, you will start to have stuff bubble to the surface. Now, do not put so much pressure on yourself that you have to be like, I have to come up with an idea to work through the rest of it. So you may be like, great, I want to do a mentorship where we can kind of do the same with other people. And this is going to be something high end. It's going to be a group of 15 people. And I'm thinking in my head, I want to charge 20 grand for it. Okay. It could be something like that. Or it could be something where you're like, you know what? I actually have a really big TikTok following. I've got like 200,000 people on TikTok. And what I want to do is create something low cost, but high volume. So I'm going to create something that's $15. And then this is also going to be a bit of a funnel where if people really enjoy the $15 thing and they've had a good experience, then I do have something, you know, that is that next level up that I can sell them. So this so much as well around here will be dependent on your kind of audience and current visibility strategy. So if you came along to like hot business, you'll be familiar with my goals process for business growth, which stands for goals. So what are we working towards? What kind of business do we have? Then our offers, then our lead generation and visibility, and then our sales. And this has to be a pipeline. And what we do is we will make sure that everything kind of lines up. And then from that is our business plan to get our goal. Where I see sometimes a disconnect is I will have a client that does not really want to do daily visibility and lead gen, and they don't want to pay, but they want to make $1 million with a $15 product. And unless you have a viral moment of your exact customer and you commit to being visible, it's going to be a very hard way to make $1. So I am just going to say that one of the best things that you can do if you don't always want to be on and you do have a smaller following is that I would probably look at something that is just a little bit higher priced, because what you're going to see here is you're going to see, if you do a bit of effort and sales, that's going to make a really big dent in your bank account. What you also may realize though is that when you do this and when you start to think about like how the offer could look, one of the worst things that you can do is try to jam too much within a particular offer. So you actually may have 2 or 3 different offers. And what I would encourage you to do is I can't even remember how to spell Excel. One of those days, there we go, is to go and have a look on Miss Excel's website and just see the different courses that she sells. She'll bundle them together, but how she doesn't have like the Excel course where it's everything. She'll look at like different parts and components. So make sure as you're going into this that you're not trying to do too much, because that can also be like really hard to sell. It's like with Give Good Email, we're not a whole funnel course. We're not email and list building. It's like we do email and email automation really well. And I have had some people who are like, oh, but I want to grow my list. And I'm like, okay, cool. The problem though is if you go to a course that is list growth and ads and it's this and it's that, it's kind of like buying 3-in-1 shampoo. You know, you're not going to be able to go really deep. Like this is very targeted on what we do. And that's exactly why it works. So don't feel that you need to kind of like oversell. And maybe, you know, as you go through this process, you actually realize that you've got a number of different offers in there. Another thing to think about is to get outside of the vacuum of your industry. So has anyone ever wanted to create a product and you're like, let me go and do some market research on what's already existing? You know, I want to create an email course. So who's also creating an email course? What I'm going to say is one of the best things for you to do is to be inspired by different industries, because this is where you'll see that everyone in a particular space starts to do similar and identical things to what everyone else is doing. So, you know, if you're in health, what's happening in fitness or what's happening in beauty or what's happening in tech? And just like, don't feel that when you're coming up with your ideas that you need to go and look at what already exists within that industry. You know, look at what everyone else is doing, because you may surprise yourself that you see something that, I don't know, like someone who like has a tool shop or like an automotive shop, and you're like, that is so interesting how they've done that. I am really inspired and I love how they've packaged this up. And you may really, really, really surprise yourself at like what you actually find here. So when you start to come up with some things, this is where you can flesh this out. So the easiest way to do this is like, you know, we think about the transformation we want to do. So email course. I want to get people emailing. I want to get them making money on email marketing. What I can do here is I can be like, okay, cool. Well, what is this? What is idea 1? Maybe it's like a 6-week course. Okay, cool. What's idea 2? Maybe it's like we can do this in a day. And what's idea 3? Why don't we go something high ticket? Why don't I just be like, okay, why don't I create something that's $20,000? Okay. That's my approach to creating new offers, is I'll kind of run some different scenarios. So I'm like, what could it look like at this? What could it look like at this? What could it look like at this? And what we're doing here is it's not about coming up with a perfect offer for us to sell. It's about getting our little creative juices flowing and ideas coming up. And part of the idea process with things is also doing bad work. I think sometimes we can put pressure on ourselves where it's like, this needs to be 100% perfect. And the work that I am doing and what I am putting down on paper needs to be the finished product. No. Like, surprise yourself and just come up with some bad ideas. Surprise yourself and just come up with maybe some like really out there thinking. Like, make $100,000 offer. What would that look like? And then what you can do here is you can answer these questions. So what is the offer idea? So, you know, we've got this $20,000 offer idea. What is that? What's it about? Well, In this $20,000 offer, I think what I want to do is I want to work with agency providers for them to do this particular thing, okay? Or I want to work with clients and I want to like overhaul their health and like look at their biomarkers and get them to this, and this. I want to work with people that are doing triathlons. Who is it for? Who is the target customer for this offer? We want to be really clear on this. And what you may find is that maybe there's like two different people. So if we're looking at email marketing, it's like, oh, okay, cool. We've got e-commerce and we've got service-based. So you may have a couple of different people in here, but what we want to make sure is that we're not going so broad where we're like, it's for everyone, because this is where it can be a bit hard for us to differentiate ourselves and then sell. We then want to get clear on how long do we want the offer to go for. So if this is something where it's truly passive, where you are selling it, it's pretty hands-off, the person is in charge of their own transformation, that may not matter too much. But where this is important is if this is something scalable, like a mentorship or a mastermind or a mini mind, I want you to think about how long you want your energy to be in the thing. Like, how long do you want to be on for? Then we want to think about what is the big promise of the offer. So, if someone comes in and they're like, just tell it to me straight, what am I going to get? How could you kind of summarize that in like a nice little sentence? And what is cool here is if you do like the little 3 ideas that I said, what did I say? We've got like a 6-week, we've got a 1-day, and then a $20,000 offer. Okay. Like just pretend you're doing this in a table. What we want is we want to look at the big promise of each of these. They're all going to be, maybe you're like, oh, this is really different. Like I actually really love this one. Or, oh, this is feeling a bit weak. The cool thing about this is if you do it in that way, where you're kind of like coming up with like 2 or 3 different offers, what you may find is you're like, this is actually really standing out to me now. And this is why, like, again, this is my process, how I love to work, because I think sometimes we can get too attached to an offer where it's like, I want to create a 6-week course, it's $2,000. And then we kind of like lose sight of what we're doing. So just give yourself permission here to come up with maybe some adventurous thinking and some bad ideas. And you may actually surprise yourself that the offer that you thought you wanted to go with isn't actually the one that you are going to sell. Then what we want to do after we've done that is, what is the customer's starting point and why are they coming to you? That's really important. And again, you may find that, oh, well, this is their starting point, but they really need to know this. Okay, cool. That may be another offer that you could sell. Maybe it's like a little prep work unit that they need to get really clear on. I remember when I did Marie Forleo's B School, she had some prep work, and I think then she eventually sold it as its own course potentially. And it was a unit called Start the Right Business. So B School was around, you've got an idea, let's sell it, let's market it, let's do your website and create your online business. But to do that, you need to have an idea. So she had this separate independent offer that enabled people to kind of do that. So if you had people and they're like, oh, I really want to do the thing, but I still don't have an idea, this is where you can be like, oh, okay, sweet, I actually have something to sell to you. Then we want to get clear on what exactly are they getting for their money. And then what we want to get clear on lastly is what is their dream endpoint. So they get 4 leads a week from their email sequence that convert. They can touch their toes. They know how to make $1 million. What I love to do as well is stretch my ideas. So as you are coming up, and if something is kind of really standing out to you, like this is the thing that I want to do, what is really fun is to then play around with that at different price points. So how would this offer look at $50? How would it look at $500, $5,000, $50,000? Like what would you sell? I ran a mini mind. Oh my gosh, when was it? This was actually the mini mind. The business of email. And one of the tasks that I got them to do is that we brainstormed an email offer. And I think we brainstormed one at maybe it was 10,000, 20,000 and 100,000. And when I say email offers, this was for service providers. So like marketing agencies, freelancers, virtual assistants, OBMs. I was like, someone comes to you with a $10,000 budget. What are you selling them? And what was really interesting is With the $100,000 offer, I told all of them, I said, go and work on that. And then we're going to come back as a group and we are going to present our offers. And it was so interesting that everyone, like, although they sold email services, they came back and they were doing something so wildly different. So play around with this and be like, what would this look like? This is something I'm doing with Give Good Email at the moment. I've asked myself, what would Give Good Email look as a $50,000 offer? Do you know how fun that is to think about? And the reason that this is fun is you will start to think about shit that you never even thought about before. Instead of trying to make the one thing work, you will look for all of the ways that this idea could work. So, GGE as a $50,000 offer could be perfect for a marketing agency with 8+ staff, like 8 to 20 staff. And in that, they get this and they get quarterly training or they get something like that. That's a good offer. People will pay for that. So when you've got an idea that's kind of coming up to the surface, stretch it out and get really clear on how it can look at various price points. And something really, really fun is just experiment with your $100,000 offer. Because one of the worst things that you can do is to stay in this perpetual state of the same, where you're selling the same stuff to the same people and not really much is changing. One of the best things that you can do is to really, think big and think expansive. And part of that is stretching out your offers and how they look. Now, if you've got the worksheet handy, you will see on there that we've got a little matrix. So when you have these ideas, you can start to plug them into the matrix. And what we want to do here is we want to focus on the energy, profit, and scalability balance. So you may have an idea that on the surface feels fantastic, that you're like, this is something I want to sell. I think people will buy it. But when we actually look at how this matches up with things that could be important that you're overlooking, you may realize that there's actually something better off for you to start to sell. And what we want to look at is we want to assess the following things on the side. So we've got our offer length. How long does it go for? This is important because especially if you're someone that has kids, you've got school holidays and you're like, I don't really want to work school holidays. That's great. But if you're selling a 6-month mentorship, you are going to have to work school holidays. So you can see here how you're like, oh yeah, okay, cool. You can change that. You can be like, we're doing a 6-month mentorship and we take 2 weeks off in the middle. That's fine. But this is something to consider. Then you've got the client. They make a client and you're like, we could sell to these people, but I don't love to work with them. So they're really like a 1 out of 5. Or you may have a type of client and you're like, this is a 5 out of 5. Like, this is the person I want to work with. Then we look at the transformation. So what transformation does this offer give people? Is it a 5 out of 5 or is it something really small? Is it something where it's like, if we look at this in the context of email marketing, is it that you're going to help them with their subject, like their email subject? The transformation of that's really like a 1 out of 5 because you think about it, you can use Chat and Claude to help with that. Instead of, if the transformation was make your first $100,000 with email, that's a 5 out of 5 transformation. The next point is ascension. So if you have a bit of an offer ecosystem, so maybe you've got this one thing and then you've got this and then you want them to go to this next point, does it have good ascension? Or is it something where people will kind of come and buy the thing and there's not really too much scope for them to go elsewhere? We've got your time commitment as well. So where you've got this is when we look at your time, it's something like Business Bang, which is scalable, but there's still hands-on stuff for me compared to Give Good Email. So Give Good Email is like a 5 out of 5 because I don't really have to do that much. Business Bang, we've got a call every week. We've got Slack. The time commitment for that is probably I'm going to say a 3 or 4 out of 5. Team involvement. So if you actually have to have people within your team or your virtual assistant, or if you've got an offsider that need to be involved, the energizing level. So how good do you feel about this? Is this going to deplete you or is this going to make you feel really good? We want to look at our earning potential. So this could look like Business Bang, which is pay in full $8,000 compared to my $35 offer. The earning potential for Business Bang is a 5 out of 5. the earning potential for the $35 offer is like a 1 out of 5 or a 2 out of 5. Then we've got our confidence. So how confident do you feel to like sell, launch, deliver the thing? What I say with this one is I find if you have like about a 3 out of 5 confidence, if you feel like that this is kind of like a new era that you are stepping into and this is the work that you are wanting to do. What we don't want is for you to absolutely not feel confident and then to sabotage everything because there's a lot of stuff that comes up where you're like, I can't do this because I'm just not good enough. But that does come into play because how you feel about the thing that you are selling will impact the results that you have. And if that is impacting us showing up and selling. And then the last thing is like the fuck yes value. And this is basically when you look at and you look at everything, how fuck yes are you? Is this like, oh yeah, fuck yes, this is so good? Or are you kind of like a bit, I'm not too sure. What we want to do is every idea that we have, we plug it into the matrix. And you know that you are onto a good offer to sell and start with, the closer that it gets to 50. Now, when we've done that, you think about it. We are creating from our genius. So we know how things are going to look. We know how we're different, how we're unique. We start to come up with the offer. And then now we have data on what is a good offer for us to kind of like move forward with. The next thing that we want to do is we want to price for profit. So we want to make sure that we are deeply profitable with everything that we are selling. Now, the cool thing is if you are already successful in your like what you're doing, which you all are, you can really just go to town with this because you think about it, it like doesn't really have to sell. So we don't want this to be like you giving everything away for free and not making any money. This can be your offer where it's 90% profit or where you're like, this is the thing that is the cherry on top that I know when we sell, it makes a significant dent in my life and in my bank account. So we want to make sure that we are pricing things for profit. All of my clients, when I work with them, we do a profitability spreadsheet. I've got some for services, group programs, and what this looks like is we will account for the proposed price of the offer, any expenses or like things that we need to kind of charge for. So our time, any involvement. So for example, I do this with Business Bang. And what I do is I work out, who is our profit person or how many do I need to sell to be profitable? And this is also amazing if you are someone that wants to launch some kind of like group program or offering and you are very, very stressed about launching it and then not selling enough and then you're having to deliver the thing and you're losing money. Has that come up for anyone before? I'd be really curious where if the thing that is kind of preventing you from moving forward is the fear of going through a launch and then only having 2 people. So what I would get you to do is you need to then know, if you are worried about this, you've got to know 2 things. You have to know your break-even person and you've got to know your profit person. What I mean by this is, let's pretend we'll stick with Business Bang. If you don't know what Business Bang is, it is my 6-month advisory program. With that, there are expenses like we've got Slack, we've got my time, which you think about it, you have to account for because if I am delivering calls in Business Bang, guess what? I cannot do one-to-one client work. So this is where if you have delivery that you need to do within a group program, you will have to assign a dollar value to your time. What I do in this situation is I personally look at the most expensive thing that I sell per hour, and that is how I account for my time. The reason that I do that is because if I am doing this, I cannot do the expensive thing that I sell. You think about it. It's like if you're like, I'm only going to make this $100 for an hour, but I know that I sell something that's $600 for the hour. Why the fuck are we fucking around with the $100 thing? You'd be better off to sell the $600 thing. So what you need to then do is make that hourly rate in here reflect at $600. What we want to do is get all of this out on paper. and be like, how many hours am I going to spend in Slack or nurturing people? So for Business Bang, I've got my hourly rate for strategy. My friend Emma from the Broke Generation was sitting next to me when I was doing this, and she looked at it and she was laughing for about a good solid 5 minutes because I had a line, it was number 2, and it was keeping the group hot. And she was like, what the fuck is that? And I said, well, you've got to nurture a group. You got to be in there. You got to answer questions. You got to keep it hot. For stuff like that, I will do lesser rate purely because it's the kind of thing where I can do as I'm walking to get a coffee or if I'm standing in line somewhere. I don't need to be face to face or like on my computer. I can do that anywhere, but I still will account for my time. What we want to do when we've done that, remembering tax, remembering GST if you are registered, and we want to float a price. It's like, cool, let's imagine we're going to charge $2,000 for this. We want to work out who is your break-even person. So how many people do you have to sell for you to completely break even and not lose money? And you may be like, okay, cool, I've got to sell 5 or I have to sell 15. Amazing. Maybe you're like, okay, the likelihood of me selling 15 feels like it's going to be a lot of work and I'm probably going to get there on the last day of cart. What you then can do is you either need to rework the price or you need to take deliverables out or both. So you may need to raise the price and then take out 3 things. And now all of a sudden your break-even person has gone from 15 down to 6. That's a lot better. And where this is really good to kind of do pre-launch is you don't want to get into a launch and when sales aren't coming, you're like, oh my God, no one's buying. Oh my God, I'm not going to sell 100. And we really get in our head about this. So we want to work this out before we even get into launch. Then what we want to do is we want to work out our profit person. So it's going to depend if you are obviously a sole trader setup where you are the business, you can take the money versus if you are a company. But how much profit do you want to walk away with after this? And you may be like, okay, I want $50,000 profit. Sweet. What number person is that? And we want those 2 people written down. So you think about it. We were originally 15, then we reworked it and it's 8. So 8 is our break-even person and maybe 25 is your profit person. What ideally you should do especially if you are worried and you feel stressed, is you want to launch behind the scenes until you get to that 8th person. And then when you have broken even, you go public. Because it really, at the end of the day, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but you'll know when you show up that your costs are covered and that everything is covered. And now any sale that comes in is pure profit on top. That is going to have you launch with such a different energy. And what you may find is that you'll actually think more strategic in actually doing that, okay? And this is what I would recommend doing. Do the work of working these numbers out and then getting those people. So your break-even person and your profit person. Which leads me to the next point. So a lot of you are like, how the fuck then do I sell behind the scenes? Or how do I just know? I don't know how to do this. You need a way to validate. And obviously, as someone whose bread and butter is essentially email marketing, the easiest way to do this is with a wait list. You get so much data, you can ask people questions, you can do things behind the scenes, and you can get enough information. It's like, is the messaging hitting? Who is opting in? Is this the segment we want? Before you go to the hard work of actually creating the thing. Now, when we look at people opting into your list, it could be like downloading a freebie or being like, yes, I want to be on the wait list. This is a micro purchase. They're not paying with any money, but they are paying with their attention, and attention has a dollar value. So it says here that the cost of attention per minute has actually risen to $1.03. And I'm pretty sure that this was actually in US dollars. So if someone gives you a minute of their attention, it is worth a lot, which is why I am so grateful that you are still here for this workshop. Because even though you're not paying me for it, you are paying with something else, and that is your attention. So if people are opting into a wait list, that is a really, really good sign. And what you can see here is who is opting in. Like what messaging have I used to make them like ask questions or opt in? What I will say as well is with the waitlist, it's a really good idea to kind of add some questions in there or some kind of thing where you're getting a bit of data. So you'll know for me whenever you opt into an event, I ask you a question And the questions that I asked you for this one, I think it was who has a passive offer idea, who has no idea, who already has a product and it's selling, and then who doesn't have a product and it's not selling. Why this is awesome and something funny with this event, you were all very mixed. Everything was probably like split 25% across those options. If every single person came to this workshop and you all had successful passive products, you think about it. I'm probably not going to be talking as much about coming up with ideas. I'm maybe going to be really focusing on shaping the offer and how we actually can take this that you're already doing and make it bigger. So it gives you the ability to tailor what you are doing based on who is actually paying attention. And sometimes, it's good to do that because you may be like, this is so interesting. We actually have this segment that's paying attention. Maybe we actually sell something to this segment. Like, I didn't really think that they would be interested, but I love that they are, compared to being like, no, I really am happy to do the grunt work and build an audience with these people. All right. So you can start to make decisions. Now, you'll notice that I do waitlists and opt-ins for basically everything. But this was what I did for Business Bang last year. And we had two options down the bottom. I'm startup and I want mentorship to grow, and I'm profitable and oh my God, I can't even speak. Profitable and I want advisory to scale. Why this was good to ask is imagine if I had everyone who opted in here and they were a startup. I'm like, cool. I have to look at the messaging because this is not for beginners. Like, this is for people who are established in business or they have been doing the thing that they've been doing for a long time and then they're ready to go into their new iteration. I ideally want people that are this last option. So I'm now getting data on who is actually paying attention. So right now, hopefully you've got a lot of ideas and we now have a framework for you to actually work out how this can look and how we actually can price this for profit, and then how we actually can validate this to make sure that we are not creating something that isn't going to sell. Okay. So the first thing that we do is extract our genius, the thing that, people just cannot shut up about, where they're like, I love that you do this. This is so incredible. We want to shape it into something that either sells while we sleep or is something that is really scalable. We want to make sure that we run it through the matrix to actually check that we have hit the sweet spot and this is going to work for us and our business and our life. We want to price it for profit because bad days in business will happen. And then we want to validate it fast with a wait list. So, you think about it. If you kind of have an idea of what this could look like, you could really chuck up a wait list this afternoon. And think about how awesome it would be if you're still like, I don't know if this is going to sell, and you have 30 people that opt in. That's incredible. And this will probably give you the confidence to kind of keep going with it as well. And now you think about it, you've got like a little group of people where you can ask them questions and you can help them kind of validate the finished product. So I believe that your expertise is way too valuable to just be trapped in your calendar. Okay. And what I'm going to say is go through your week and just notice almost like the pull that you feel if you're like, oh, okay, I'm on Zoom all the time, or I'm doing this all the time. And ask yourself, is there going to be an easier way for your output of labor and your time to result in a lot more money? Okay. So it's time for you to clone your genius and to put it into something that truly, truly works for you. And today is the perfect time to do that because you think about it, it is July 1st. If you want to keep working with me, we do have some more workshops that are happening. But if you haven't already, I would go through Hot Business, which is my sexy little audit. This is an example of something where I have put my genius into something that is free. So what I mean by that, I've taken a framework that I teach, my goals framework, and I have put that into a lead magnet. I do have my $35 offer as well, which if you haven't purchased that, it's pretty bloody awesome. But if you want to work with me further, I do, of course, have Business Bang, which is my entrepreneurial mentorship. We look at like growing a profitable business. And in that, I love for you to actually create something that is scalable and it's profitable. And we also develop the entrepreneur in the process. And what I mean by that is I get your head in a state where you feel fine to do anything. Like no one can pay you any money for 2 months and you don't care, you're still showing up, that you're pitching 100K offers, whatever it is. But that's pretty much the end of our workshop. Hopefully you all have an incredible day. I'm going to go and have my second coffee of the day, and I will talk to you later. If you've got any questions or anything that comes up, find me on email, find me on Instagram at professionalbabe, and I have loved this. Hopefully you've got some good ideas out of this, and I will talk to you later. Mwah.